Okay, let's unpack this. We've been immersed in some really challenging sources this week, mostly spiritual reflections from figures like Watchman Nee.
Mhm.
And the core tension they get at is just, it's absolutely gripping. This is not your basic Sunday school stuff.
Not at all.
We're talking about the very foundation of a person's religious life.
That tension is the whole point. And our mission for this deep dive is to really pull apart that chilling distinction between all the religious activity, what you do publicly,
Right.
and true, genuine intimacy, who you are when no one's looking.
And that leads to this provocative opening question the material forces on you, which is, after years, maybe decades, of service, of teaching, of evangelizing, all
Ever.
does God truly know you? Or does he just know your schedule and, your religious resume?
It's a terrifying question. It really is. Because it forces us right up against one of the most frightening passages in the entire New Testament. We have to start there. Matthew 7.
This is where the shockwave hits.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is describing the final judgment. And he's talking to people who were, by any measure, successful. They prophesied, they cast out demons, they did miracles,
All in his name.
all in his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to them, I never knew you.
And you have to pause right there and let the weight of that sink in. He did not question their works.
Yeah.
He didn't say, oh, you faked those miracles or your prophecies were all wrong. The activity itself, that wasn't the problem.
The problem was the relationship, the absence of it. The core issue was he didn't know them.
That's the light bulb moment. Watchman Nee saw this all the time. He said that so many sincere people, they unconsciously substitute that intimate knowledge of God with just external activity.
The good-looking outer life.
Exactly. An incredibly robust outer life, but with no real inner life to back it up. It's a facade, and it's just not sustainable.
It's not. So let's define that disconnect. Nee makes this really sharp distinction between knowing about God and actually knowing God.
Which can sound a bit abstract at first.
It does. I think we need a relatable analogy here. It's like you can spend years studying a celebrity. You can know their entire history, their favorite food, their philosophies. You know everything about them.
You're an expert.
You're an expert. But if you met them on the street, they'd look right through you and say, I'm sorry, who are you?
That's the gap. That is the modern day gap. We confuse research with relationship. And on the flip side, God's knowledge us. It's inherently intimate. It comes before anything we could ever do.
You see that with Jeremiah right at the very beginning. God says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you.
Yes. Before you existed, before you could perform a single good work. That's a foundational kind of knowing.
And for us to enter into that, we have to allow that same level of transparency back, which means vulnerability. It means surrendering the self we've constructed.
And that's the hang-up, isn't it? That's why we hide. Why would someone who looks so devoted spend all this energy on performance?
Because it's easier.
It's so much easier to hide behind the work, the fig leaves, as the sources call them, just like Adam did in the garden.
The fear is that if God saw the real us, the impure thoughts, the questionable motives, the secret struggles,
The stuff we barely admit to ourselves.
right, that he wouldn't love us, or at least he wouldn't use us, so we hand him the resume instead of our actual heart.
But look at the contrast. Look at someone like King David in the Psalms. He was anything but perfect. He had these massive failures, both public and private.
Oh, huge.
But he was completely brutally honest about it. He was a spiritual mess publicly. He's shouting at God. He's expressing doubt, fear, then joy. It's the full, uncensored human experience.
He didn't edit himself for God.
Never. And because of that radical transparency, what does God call him? Not a great religious leader.
No. He calls him a man after my own heart. His value was in his heart's willingness to be known, not in his flawless track record.
Which was anything but flawless.
Far from it. And that example, I think, perfectly frames this next big idea, the trap of performance and productivity.
The tragic outcome of all this hiding is that you can be so busy preaching, leading, praying, but when the noise stops and you're alone, all you feel is this disturbing emptiness.
And it's because we've flipped the whole thing upside down. We've inverted the divine order. God made Adam for communion first. The work in the garden, that came second.
A being came before the doing.
Exactly. But we've completely reversed it. We get so consumed with the stress of doing things for him that we forget to just be with him.
And our culture just screams for this. It validates it. We live in a world of metrics, and Christian culture, well, it often measures worth by ministerial productivity.
Oh, absolutely. How many souls won? How many Bible studies are you leading? How big is the church budget? It's like a corporate structure for the soul.
But what's so fascinating is that Jesus just flat out rejected that model. You think of that story with the widow who gave 2 tiny copper coins.
Yeah, in Mark.
Right. I mean, compared to the huge sums the rich were putting in, her donation was basically nothing. It was negligible from a results-oriented perspective.
But he valued the heart. He wasn't tracking the ROI. He was looking at the sincerity. The true value isn't in what we do for God. It's in our willingness to let God work in us.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second. That's the critical friction, right? If we stop focusing on performance, doesn't ministry just collapse? Don't you need some level of doing to show you're actually contributing?
It's a fair question, and the answer Nee gives is, it's nuanced. He says the fruit of the Spirit isn't activity, it's character. If you're just performing out of obligation, the fuel runs out. You're left empty.
So the activity should flow from the intimacy.
Exactly. The work becomes the byproduct, not the goal.
And the cost of getting that wrong. Well, it's chilling. The anecdotes Nee shared are just devastating. There's one about a highly admired Christian leader who confessed his hours of prayer were really just spiritual boredom.
He was just going through the motions.
Empty recitation. Just doing it to maintain his reputation in the community. He was doing the right thing, but for the wrong audience entirely.
He was a prisoner of his own image. And then there's that other story, the missionary in China. He had this magnificent outer man.
Super productive.
Oh yeah, constantly studying, evangelizing, getting results. But his inner life was a total mess, completely neglected.
And the whole thing just shattered, didn't it, over something small.
A tiny logistical setback. And instead of grace or patience, he just explodes in this irrational rage. It shocked everyone. Because his inner man, the pride, the temper, it had never been exposed. It had never been transformed by a real relationship.
And that failure points right back to what Jesus taught in Mark 7. He says evil comes from within the heart.
From the inside out.
The real issue is who we are when nobody is watching, not just what we do when everyone is. The transformation has to start at the source.
So this all leads to the central question for any busy person, really. Can you serve hard without loving deeply?
And the sources say unequivocally, yes, you can. Look at the warning to the church in Ephesus in Revelation.
Right, for context, this is Jesus sending a letter to this church, and what he tells them is, well, it's a gut punch.
He starts with praise. He says, I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. These were not lazy people.
No.
But then comes the hammer. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love you had at first.
They were doing all the work, but the relationship had gone cold. Their activity was just running on fumes, on inertia, not affection.
So if relentless activity is the trap, how do we get out of it? How do we change the whole dynamic?
This is the fundamental shift. It's a profound idea from Galatians, where the Apostle Paul actually corrects himself mid-sentence.
It's incredible. He's writing to these believers and he says, but now after you have come to know God, and then he stops, he adds, or rather, to be known by God.
That little correction is everything. It pivots the entire relationship. It moves from our effort to know him, to our surrender, to being known by him.
The burden shifts. It's not about striving anymore. It's about surrender. And Nee really breaks this down. The outer man is your reputation, your appearance. The inner man is your secret thoughts, your fears, your desires.
But God is interested in the inner man. He's looking at the heart, the person you are when no one else is in the room.
And to really deal with that inner man, you need the cross. Not just for redemption, but for subjective revelation, for transformation.
We'd love the benefits of salvation.
Of course.
But we fight that painful process of self-discovery and death to the ego.
Because it hurts. It really does. And that's why Nee makes this powerful, almost paradoxical statement. He says, the greatest barrier to knowing God is not sin, but self.
It's a controversial thing to say in some circles.
It is, but think about it. Sin can be confessed. It can be forgiven. There's a path to restoration. But self, our own competence, our own strength, our rightness, that has to be crucified. It has to die.
Which is exactly what Jesus meant in Matthew 16, right?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for my sake will find it.
Yes. Clinging to that constructed performing self is the ultimate roadblock because we're trying to manage the relationship on our own terms. The ultimate surrender is just letting God know us completely.
Okay, let's make this practical. Let's turn to application.
Yeah.
For anyone listening who hears all this and thinks, that's me, I've been running on performance fumes. How do they start to make that transition? What's the blueprint for intimacy?
Okay, we've pulled 5 essential practices from the sources. It's sort of an anti-performance roadmap. It's all about turning inward instead of just ramping up more activity.
Let's have the first one.
First, And this sounds so simple, but it is revolutionary. Stop hiding. It literally means coming before God exactly as you are. You drop the fig leaves, you stop listing your good works, and you confess your desperate condition without God.
That sounds incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, if you're used to starting your prayer time with a list of your accomplishments, what do you replace that with?
Radical honesty. It means acknowledging the pride behind the good deed you did, the impatience you felt while you were helping someone, the ambition that's driving your ministry. Honesty is the only starting point for real intimacy.
Because it forces you to admit you need him.
Exactly. Not just that you're able to serve him.
Okay, what's step 2?
Second, live in presence. Stop treating God like a consultant you only visit for major problems. Start seeing him as a father you live with in constant low-grade communion.
So it's less about scheduled appointments and more about like an ambient awareness.
That's a great way to put it. It's making your normal Christian life a moment-by-moment walk. He's present in the supermarket line, not just in the church sanctuary. You integrate him into the small moments, not just the big ones.
Okay, step 3.
Third, this is maybe the hardest one. Allow the subjective work of the cross. This means the ongoing, sometimes painful death of the ego. It's Paul in Galatians 2:25. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me.
So we accept the objective work of the cross for our salvation. But we fight the subjective, internal work that requires us to surrender our self-importance and our need for control.
We fight it tooth and nail, but that's subjective work. It means letting go of the need to be impressive. It means allowing your failures to expose your hidden weaknesses so you're forced back onto grace alone.
The 4th step must be about prayer.
It is. Fourth, practice prayer as communion. You have to shift from just petition, or anxious shopping lists of requests to actual heart-to-heart conversation.
Which means you have to stop talking at some point.
You have to stop talking. It requires silence. It requires listening, receptivity. We're so focused on transmitting our needs, we forget that communication is a two-way street.
How do you even start to do that? To shift from list delivery to listening?
It takes discipline. You could start by just allocating 5 minutes of silence for every 15 you spend talking. Ask God to show you one thing you need to let go of, instead of listing 10 things you want to get. It's a huge act of humility.
And the 5th step brings it all full circle.
Fifth, value being overdoing. We have to constantly go back to that Martha and Mary story. Martha was busy, she was stressed, she was serving Jesus, but Mary chose the better part. She just sat at his feet.
Martha was literally working for Jesus, and she gets criticized. Mary does nothing visibly productive, and she gets praised.
Because Jesus is more interested in who you are becoming inside than what you can produce outside. There's the story of a young, burnt-out Christian who was so desperate to do great things for God,
Constantly praying for a bigger platform.
bigger ministry and more influence, and he just felt empty. And one day, he felt God ask him, "Why are you so desperate to work for me when I'm primarily interested in working in you?"
Why?
That question stopped him cold. He had completely confused spiritual ambition with spiritual health.
And when he finally shifted his focus, when he allowed God to work in him through silence and confession,
He found a peace and a joy that all his frantic activity had never, ever delivered.
that's the liberation right there.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, what does this all really mean? Let's bring it all together.
It means you can accept this incredibly liberating truth. You do not have to earn God's approval. The good news is you are already fully known. He sees everything, all our contradictions, all our complexities, and he still loves us completely.
And that knowledge, paradoxically, leads to real power. But it comes through weakness.
It's 10 Corinthians. My power is made perfect in weakness. God's power rests only on broken vessels, on people who recognize their desperate need for him.
Watchman Nee put it so powerfully, didn't he? God never uses a man greatly until he has broken him completely. It's a painful process, but a necessary one.
Think about the prodigal son. When he comes home, he's destitute, he has no resume, no achievements, no good works to offer.
He just offers his broken, failed self.
And the father doesn't make him work off his debt. He runs to him with extravagant joy. His love wasn't diminished one bit by his knowledge of his son's total failure.
That is the ultimate picture of being known and loved, no conditions attached. So, Nee's final advice really brings this home for us. The Christian life does not begin with doing, but with receiving. We don't grow by trying to do more for God, but by allowing him to do more in us.
It's the path of humility, but it's the only path to real peace. So here's the final thought for you to mull over. If you stopped all your activity, your serving, your leading, your volunteering, what would be left of your identity? The path up is down. And it starts with the humility of being truly known.